What if the first sign of dementia wasn't memory loss, but a single strange sentence? No forgetfulness, no confusion, just a fleeting phrase, odd, out of place, and easy to ignore. It happens in a heartbeat, then disappears. But years later, that small moment becomes the first breadcrumb on a trail no one noticed. Here's the truth. Dementia doesn't always knock loudly. Sometimes it whispers. It hides in everyday conversations, disguises itself as fatigue, stress, or even a joke. Even skilled doctors can miss it, because the earliest signs often don't fit the script we've come to expect. In this video, we're uncovering the most overlooked, easily dismissed early signs of dementia. The ones families remember only when it's already too late. You deserve to know what to look for before things spiral. But before we dive into all that, if you're new here, welcome to the channel. We're here to help you live healthier, feel better, and age vibrantly. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a wellness tip that could change your life. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love hearing from viewers around the world. Let's dive in and listen closely before the whispers become cries for help. 1. I don't know where I am. A red flag for spatial disorientation. When a person says this, it's not simply forgetfulness. It's a sign of spatial disorientation, a common and early warning sign of dementia. Spatial disorientation occurs when the brain begins to lose its ability to interpret and understand physical surroundings, even if those places are extremely familiar. Mrs. Taylor, age 76, has lived in the same cozy suburban home for over 30 years. One quiet evening, she walks into her own kitchen, looks around blankly, and mutters, "I don't know where I am. This doesn't look like my house." Her daughter, who's standing beside her, is stunned. Everything is exactly as it has always been. Yet Mrs. Taylor looks overwhelmed, confused, and almost fearful. This signals a failure of the brain's parietal and occipital lobes, which are involved in processing spatial relationships and visual cues. According to a 2017 study published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease, spatial disorientation can appear up to 5 years before diagnosis, often during complex navigation or even in one's own home. Neuroimaging studies have shown that atrophy in the hippocampus and posterior parietal cortex correlates with poor spatial awareness in early Alzheimer's. This isn't about forgetting a location. It's about the brain losing its internal map of the world. 2. I just saw mom yesterday. Temporal disorientation and time confusion. This phrase reflects temporal disorientation, a disruption in the brain's ability to understand and place events in their correct time frame. The person may become stuck in a different decade of their life and believe long-deceased individuals are still alive. Mrs. O'Malley, 82, calmly tells her family during dinner, "My mother called me last night. I need to go visit her tomorrow." Her daughter quietly lowers her fork. Mrs. O'Malley's mother passed away in 1984. Yet Mrs. O'Malley appears fully convinced, even content. This indicates that the brain's ability to track chronological memory is compromised. Rather than forgetting entirely, the brain starts to blend timelines, merging past and present. These moments are not hallucinations. They are genuine, lived experiences to the person. Studies in the journal Neurological, 2019, show that temporal lobe degeneration, particularly in the entorhinal cortex, leads to an impaired sense of time. These patients may experience time-traveling sensations where their internal clock reverts to earlier life stages. 3. You're not my daughter/son. A breakdown in facial and identity recognition. This heartbreaking statement isn't about rejection. It's a manifestation of prosopagnosia, face blindness, and identity confusion, where the brain can no longer match familiar faces with their proper roles or names, especially in the context of advancing dementia. Mrs. Chin, 79, gazes at her son David and quietly says, "You're not my son. My David is just a little boy." David, now 45 and visiting her every day, feels a deep ache in his chest. His mother remembers her child, but not the man he's become. This shows that long-term memory, childhood, remains somewhat intact, while recent, updated memories, adult children, current age, are disintegrating. The brain holds onto deeply emotional memories from decades ago, while more recent neural connections have faded. The temporoparietal junction and fusiform face area, regions critical for facial recognition and emotional tagging, are often compromised early in Alzheimer's. A 2020 study in Brain, a journal of neurology, revealed that identity misattribution can occur even before full memory loss, especially in frontal variant dementia. 4. I want to go home. A cry for comfort and psychological safety. This phrase is not always literal. When someone with dementia says, I want to go home, they're often expressing a deep emotional longing for a time or place where they once felt safe, loved, and oriented. It's a symbolic plea for stability, not necessarily a desire to return to a physical house. At a senior care facility, Mr. Wallace stares longingly out the window and pleads, Please take me home. He's lived there for over a year. Staff gently remind him this is his home now, but he insists he misses his real home, referring to a farmhouse he sold 40 years ago. This signals profound disorientation and emotional detachment from the present. The individual may be feeling overwhelmed, afraid, or confused by their current environment, and thus yearn for the comforting, structured memories of their past. A 2018 article in The Gerontologist explains that this phrase is often a manifestation of limbic system distress, where the emotional brain centers, like the amygdala and hippocampus, are unable to anchor the person to their present setting. It's especially common in sundowning syndrome, when agitation and confusion peak in late afternoon or evening. 5. I think something's wrong with my brain. During moments of quiet reflection, she would often say something simple, yet deeply unsettling to her daughter. I think something's wrong with my brain. She wasn't talking about forgetting where she placed her keys or mixing up dates. What she described was far more abstract, a vague but persistent sense that something inside her was off, like a flickering light behind a closed door. She couldn't quite put it into words. It was just a quiet, internal unease. Her doctor reassured her. Neurological exams were normal, cognitive screening tests showed no deficits, and she was still functioning well in daily life. But the feeling didn't go away. Over time, that internal sensation turned into subtle but chronic anxiety, restlessness without a clear cause, a gnawing discomfort she couldn't explain. Her family saw no change, but inside she felt a creeping shift. This phenomenon is recognized in modern neuroscience as subjective cognitive decline, SCD. It refers to a person's perception that their cognitive abilities are slipping, even when objective tests show normal performance. A 2022 longitudinal study published in Neurology found that individuals with SCD are at significantly increased risk of progressing to mild cognitive impairment, MCI, and dementia, even if initial scans and memory tests appear normal. What makes SCD particularly important is that it may represent the earliest detectable phase of neurodegeneration, before any outward symptoms begin to show. It's not about scoring poorly on memory tasks. It's about an internal awareness that something has shifted, a mismatch between how you feel and how the world sees you. This quiet voice is often dismissed as anxiety, overthinking, or age-related worry. But in truth, it may be the brain's first whisper for help. So when someone says this, even with a smile, even just once, don't brush it off. It may be the very first sign of change. 6. I just don't feel like myself anymore. Nancy was 67 when she began saying a phrase that puzzled her family. I just don't feel like myself anymore. She wasn't confused. She wasn't forgetful. But something fundamental had shifted. She no longer felt emotionally connected to her life, disinterested in her favorite hobbies, quiet during family dinners, emotionally flat. At first, her family believed it was depression. She began therapy and tried lifestyle changes, exercise, diet, meditation. But nothing seemed to lift the weight she felt. 2 years later, Nancy was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia, FTD, a form of dementia that doesn't begin with memory loss, but with subtle changes in mood, behavior, and personality. A study published in The Lancet Neurology revealed that FTD is often misdiagnosed as depression or a psychiatric disorder because early signs are emotional and behavioral, not cognitive. Patients may lose empathy, motivation, or their sense of self before memory is ever affected. In Nancy's case, it wasn't sadness, it was emotional blunting. She lost passion for things she once loved. She couldn't connect emotionally. She began to feel like a stranger in her own skin. This isn't the same as typical depression. While depression often fluctuates or improves with treatment, emotional numbness from FTD persists and deepens over time. It reflects early deterioration in the brain's frontal and temporal lobes, which regulate personality and emotional processing. To outsiders, Nancy still looked like Nancy. But inside, she had already begun to fade. So when someone says they don't feel like themselves anymore, especially if that feeling lingers, pay attention. It may be a sign that their emotional foundation is quietly eroding. 7. Stop changing things. I can't keep up. Ronald, 75, had always been flexible and calm. But suddenly he couldn't stand change. Whether it was a new arrangement of the living room, an updated phone interface, or a different cereal brand, every alteration frustrated him. Why does everything have to change? He asked. I just want things to stay the same. At first, it seemed like harmless crankiness. But over time, his rigidity became more intense, almost obsessive. 3 years later, he was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, MCI, a condition that often bridges the gap between healthy aging and dementia. Research from the Alzheimer's Disease Neuroimaging Initiative, ADNI, found that one of the early behavioral signs of MCI is reduced cognitive flexibility, the brain's ability to adapt to new routines or environments. The brain's executive functions, planning, adjusting, adapting, begin to fray. What once felt like a minor change now feels disorienting, even threatening. To others, Ronald's discomfort looked like stubbornness. But for him, each disruption felt like losing control in a fast-spinning world. This resistance isn't just about personality. It's the brain trying to protect itself from overstimulation and confusion. So if someone who used to be adaptable starts clinging to routines or reacting harshly to small changes, don't dismiss it as aging. It may be the mind's early attempt to hold on. 8. Everyone's against me. George, 78, had always been trusting and calm. But then something shifted. He became suspicious, quietly then persistently. He began whispering that neighbors were spying on him. He told his wife that their daughter was stealing from them. He no longer felt safe in his own home. He wasn't yelling or confused. He seemed lucid. But fear had taken root. 2 years later, George was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, a condition that can begin not with memory loss, but with distorted perceptions and paranoia. According to the Alzheimer's Association and studies published in Brain, delusions and paranoia are among the most common early psychiatric symptoms in Lewy body and Alzheimer's dementia. These may appear years before measurable cognitive decline. Why does this happen? In the early stages of some dementias, the brain begins to misprocess sensory input and social cues. A neutral look may be perceived as threatening. A missed call may be seen as intentional sabotage. Loved ones may suddenly feel like enemies. This isn't simple confusion. It's a neuropsychiatric shift where trust is replaced by suspicion. And tragically, the people most feared are often the ones who love them most. These paranoid beliefs can solidify into fixed delusions, making treatment and communication difficult. Families are left feeling rejected, confused, and helpless. So when someone begins withdrawing, mistrusting, or accusing without basis, especially if it feels out of character, don't ignore it. 9. Why do I keep losing everything? For Marcia, 70, it started with constant misplacement of daily items. Her glasses, phone, and house keys. She'd place them somewhere unusual, like the refrigerator or the garden table, and later feel convinced someone else moved them. Frustration crept in, and this question, why do I keep losing everything, became a daily refrain. This early symptom is tied to degradation in the hippocampus, a part of the brain responsible for forming and retrieving short-term memories. In early dementia, this region begins to shrink, leading to what's known as source amnesia. The person can no longer remember the act of placing or moving the object in the first place. Unlike typical forgetfulness, where you eventually retrace your steps and remember where you put something, this is a break in the memory chain. The brain fails to store the action, so there's nothing to retrieve. People experiencing this often become anxious, confused, and accusatory. A 2017 study published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease found that episodic memory lapses involving object misplacement were one of the strongest early predictors of Alzheimer's in older adults. The study emphasized the role of the hippocampus in both object location binding and spatial navigation. 10. Why is everyone talking so fast? Ernest, 76, began avoiding group conversations. He'd complain, everyone's talking too fast, I just can't keep up. Despite having perfect hearing, he struggled to follow conversations at dinner tables or in busy restaurants. This is often not a hearing problem, but a language comprehension issue rooted in slowed auditory processing speed. In early dementia, the temporal lobes, responsible for interpreting speech sounds, begin to atrophy, making it difficult to decode rapid speech or complex auditory input. When this happens, even normal-paced conversations sound rushed or jumbled. The person may feel overwhelmed and mentally fatigued trying to catch up, which can lead to social withdrawal and isolation, two common emotional side effects of early cognitive decline. A study published in Neurological, 2013, showed that auditory comprehension deficits, especially under time constraints, appear early in Alzheimer's and are linked with degeneration in the left superior temporal gyrus, a key area for language and auditory processing. 11. You never told me that. Grace, 69, often got into arguments with her daughter over missed events or appointments. She'd say, "You never told me about the party," even after multiple conversations and reminders. This is a breakdown in memory encoding, not retrieval. When the brain doesn't successfully store the memory, due to deterioration in the entorhinal cortex or hippocampus, it feels like the event never happened, because for the person, it truly didn't. When someone insists they weren't told something, even when proof exists, it's not stubbornness. It's a neurological failure of memory formation. The individual's trust in their own perception remains strong, so they're likely to doubt others before questioning themselves. According to the Mayo Clinic Proceedings, 2019, frequent complaints of not being told something, when coupled with other subtle memory deficits, are a common symptom during the mild cognitive impairment, MCI stage. This stage often precedes Alzheimer's by several years. 12. I think something's wrong with my brain. Diane, 71, began voicing concerns to her husband. My brain feels foggy. I don't think this is normal. Despite no visible symptoms, she felt her mind was subtly betraying her. This is a classic case of subjective cognitive decline, SCD, when individuals sense mental changes before clinical tests can detect them. It's believed that early amyloid beta plaque formation may disrupt brain activity long before memory loss becomes measurable. These early self-perceptions are often dismissed as anxiety or aging, but research suggests they can be among the earliest detectable signs of neurodegeneration, occurring 5 to 10 years before a formal diagnosis. A 2018 review in Alzheimer's and Dementia found that people who self-report cognitive decline have a 2 to 3 times higher risk of developing dementia later on. Brain scans often reveal early plaque buildup in such individuals, even when standard memory tests still appear normal. This pattern of blame, defensiveness, and irritability is often mistaken for a personality shift, or even narcissism. But in reality, it's one of the first psychological signs of dementia, especially Alzheimer's or frontotemporal dementia. When someone starts to experience mild cognitive decline, they might realize their memory or comprehension is faltering. But instead of openly admitting it, due to shame, fear, or confusion, they may project their frustration onto others. This leads to frequent accusations, emotional volatility, and deep misunderstandings. According to a 2016 study published in JAMA Psychiatry, emotional dysregulation, such as anger, suspicion, and unprovoked outbursts, can precede memory loss in certain types of dementia. Why do calm people like Ben suddenly become harsh or accusatory? Because the brain is trying to defend against confusion, and it does so by turning fear outward. Anger becomes a way to feel in control. Blame helps mask the growing awareness that something is off. Suspicion provides a false sense of clarity when reality starts to blur. It's not malice. It's a protective reflex from a brain that's struggling to interpret the world accurately. In fact, many researchers now believe behavioral changes may appear before memory loss in up to 85% of people with Alzheimer's. A 2021 review in Nature Reviews Neurology states, neuropsychiatric symptoms, including irritability, apathy, or impulsivity, may manifest years before cognitive deficits become clinically measurable. And a Canadian study on health and aging found that people who suddenly develop persistent negativity, mood swings, or paranoia should be evaluated for mild behavioral impairment, MBI, a known precursor to dementia. If someone close to you suddenly begins to accuse others of intentional sabotage, React defensively to simple questions. Misinterpret innocent mistakes as personal attacks. Show flashes of paranoia or distrust. It's not just emotional. It could be neurological. If these behavioral changes are showing up in a loved one, don't dismiss them as just stress or getting older. Instead, start a gentle conversation about how they've been feeling. Observe patterns. Do these reactions happen after they forget something? Keep a log of behavioral changes to bring to a medical appointment. Request a screening for cognitive health. Early detection can help families intervene sooner, preserve relationships, and explore treatments that may slow progression. If this story reminded you of someone in your life, share your experience in the comments. It might help another family recognize these signs before it's too late. Like, share, and subscribe for more natural health insights and early warning signs of age-related conditions. Together, we can bring awareness and compassion to those silently suffering from early dementia. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.